Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwelere. Last season, Crystal Palace were the kings of the cup, beating Manchester City at Wembley. On Saturday, though, they suffered a huge, giant killing, losing to Macclesfield. So how did it happen? And is Palace's season at risk of being derailed? Joining us now, we have our Crystal Palace writer, Matt Woosnam, who was actually at Moss Rose. We've also got Dom Fifield. And later on, we'll be hearing from Macclesfield owner, Rob Smethurst.
We were just in floods of tears and, we were watching grown men cry, on the side of the football pitch in tears, who've supported this club from, well before I got it.
Before that, let's get into the game. Incredible drama in the FA Cup. The magic of the cup is still alive. But this cup upset could have been the biggest of them all. Let's get some stats in for you. There were 117 league places between Macclesfield and Crystal Palace. This is the first time in the competition's 155-year history a top flight side has been knocked out by a team from the 6th tier. And also, the last time a non-league side knocked out the holders was in 1909. That team were Crystal Palace, and they beat Wolves as well. Matt, have you had time to calm down? Can you, with a level head, talk about that match now?
I haven't processed it properly, to be honest with you. But I think it was just a great sort of game, I suppose. Obviously, from a Palace point of view, it's infuriating, it's frustrating, it's annoying. But I think there were certainly some Palace fans on Saturday who were kind of happy for Macclesfield, and I think part of that obviously comes from Palace having won the FA Cup in May. Otherwise, maybe those heads would be less level today if that hadn't been the case. But yeah, I think it's hard to really process exactly what happened, to be honest.
I'm just going to drop a few names here, Dom. I was hosting AFCON with JJ Okocha and John Obi Mikel, and we were watching the Palace match as we were prepping for the quarterfinals of AFCON. And both of them just looked at me and went, "Oh my goodness, Palace, I cannot believe this." But both also said, you know what, this is the magic of a cup like this. You don't get this kind of magic anywhere else we've played in the world. It's quite different to obviously what happened in May, but it is a great advert for the FA Cup.
Absolutely it is. And I think you saw the away end at Moss Rose applauding the Macclesfield players at the end of the game, the ones that weren't berating Marc Guehi. But I mean, this is the magic of the cup. Palace had their day last May. This does not detract from that in any way, because that will remain any Palace fans the greatest day of their supporting lives. But this is the flip side of it. This is what can happen. And weirdly, I mean, as a supporter, I'm almost. It's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit humiliating. But you look at it, and Macclesfield were by far and away the better team on Saturday. They were superb, absolutely superb. They knew the conditions. They played the conditions. They just played really, really well. They were well organised at both ends of the pitch, and Palace were not any of those things. And it was exactly the right result. I don't begrudge it at all on Macclesfield. I thought they were absolutely superb, and good luck to them in the fourth round. And I think Palace fans, as Matt says, Palace fans with level heads will look at it and think, well, we had our day last May, this was theirs, and good luck to them in the next round. I want to preface everything I say now by saying that, stressing that none of this is an excuse. Crystal Palace should be able to put out a team to beat Macclesfield in the 6th tier. Whether they played their 21s or their 23s or half a first team, they should be able to do it, and they didn't. So I don't want to take anything away from Macclesfield's performance on the day, which was superior to Palace's. However, Palace looked like a team, that's played too many games. I think it's 34 now, isn't it, this season? This time last year, they played 25. Too many games, too few players. I don't think they're having any preparation time in between matches to get ready for the next game. So, okay, they're playing a 6th tier team. Fine, okay. You'd expect to have the quality and the talent to be a 6th tier team. Absolutely fine. In terms of preparation, though, for playing on that 3G pitch, it was one, I think, a session in the Dome at the academy to look at a few set pieces. I mean, that's not adequate. Unfortunately, you could look at that and say, well, that's us caught up on them. Palace had a poor summer transfer window, and there are lots of reasons for that. And Matt in fact detailed those in his interview with Steve Parish a few weeks ago when Palace were actually fourth in the Premier League. A lot of reasons why that happened. It was in late sales of Eze, Guehi's, the uncertainty around his future, the Europa League, Conference League fiasco. All those things contributed a level of disquiet and uncertainty. But the reality is they brought in 5 players in the summer. All 5 of those players started at Macclesfield. And of them, I mean, JD Convoy was actually culpable for the first goal, arguably, on Saturday. But actually, of all of those 5, he's the only one I look at and think, well, he's possibly added value to this squad because there's a lot of potential there. He could well become a very good Premier League player in the future. I think the others have been, the jury's very much out, and that's being incredibly kind. So those 5 players all played on Saturday, and the team were really, really poor. And unfortunately, I think that has exposed the deficiencies of Palace's transfer window in the summer. Now, the club has still got an opportunity to rectify that. We're not in a position where Palace are struggling against relegation. They're, as I say, a month ago, they were 4th in the Premier League. They could still make a real success of this season. If they finish mid-table in the Premier League and win the Conference League to qualify for the Europa League next season, that's a hell of a success for a club like Crystal Palace still. So there's still an opportunity there. And indeed, they've gone out and they've shown a bit of ambition in this window already by spending 32, 33 million pounds on Brennan Johnson, a club record signing. However, the deficiencies that Glasner talked about post-match at Macclesfield, players who can go past people, energy around the pitch, they're still there. Those deficiencies are still there, and they need to be addressed soon. Otherwise, the rest of this season is going to be a real slog for Crystal Palace.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it some more. Let's talk about the uncertainties at Palace right now, because the FA Cup humiliation adds to what, from the outside anyway, seems like an uneasy time at Palace at this moment in time. Both Oliver Glasner, the head coach, as we've mentioned, and also Marc Guehi, the captain, are into their final 6 months of their contracts. Matt, let's start with Glasner for the beginning, then we'll go to Guehi. I mean, how much uncertainty is there for him staying at Palace?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, he gets asked quite often what's happening with his contract, and his stock answer is to say that they haven't had a chance to talk about it properly. And Steve Parish said this to me in the interview that we did, that they're in the muck and billets of the season. His focus is on preparing the team. He hasn't got time to sit down and focus on his own future and his contract. However, again, recently he did say that actually he expects to sort of have a decision on his contract by sort of within the next month. So we should get some clarity on, or at least he should have some clarity. And he did say that, when he knows, obviously the players will know, and then he'll sort of tell everyone else. When that happens is another matter. But in theory, we should have some clarity on that in the next month or so. But, I think we saw this sort of with Roy Hodgson towards the end of Roy Hodgson and his time, that uncertainty around what's going to happen can affect the team. I think it would be an excuse to say that was why Palace has struggled lately. I think it's the reasons we listed earlier: the small squad, the hectic schedule, etc. I'm sure there's some underlying issue there too with the uncertainty around Glasner's contract, but Palace won't always. Glasner's still going to be here forever. It felt like throughout that Glasner would probably leave. A lot of this season, it's felt like whenever it comes up, that the likelihood is that he will leave, and I still think there's a good chance that he will leave in the summer. I don't think it's 100% at this moment. But his future is still up in the air, and that isn't helpful for anyone, I don't think. And they do need to have that conversation. They've had conversations of sorts over the season, but now they really need to have those detailed, clear plans as to what to do. And I think for him, and I wrote about this previously, it's not about money for him. It's about he's said that every part of the club needs to improve, and he needs to see a vision that matches his ambition.
It's going to take a while, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but if he doesn't see a vision that is aligned with his, he will leave in the summer.
Yeah. Dom, I don't want to put words into anyone's mouth here, but has there always been a feeling, especially from a Palace fan's perspective, that Oliver Glasner potentially might be too good a coach for a team like Palace?
No, I think he's a perfect coach for a team like Palace. My concern would be whether he's good enough to be a coach for a bigger club. Where can you get away with playing counter-attacking football at a bigger club? I'm not sure he can, to be perfectly honest. So I think he's at exactly the right type of club, as long as that club is ambitious and aspirant in the way it wants to attack things. So no, I mean, God, I mean, that's so typical though, isn't it? Palace have a bit of success and everybody assumes that he has to move on to something else. Well, if he goes to Manchester United, do we think that's going to be a success? He's going to take a rigid 3-4-2-1 to Manchester United with their squad. Is that going to work? I'm pretty sure we just had a rigid 3-4-2-1 coach at Manchester United and it didn't work. So it's an interesting concept, but it's something that Crystal Palace supporters and indeed supporters of clubs of Palace's size have got used to over the years. That everything's always put through the prism of what the bigger clubs want. I don't think Oliver Glasner is. I mean, he is culpable for some of the things that are happening at the moment. This nine match winless streak. I think he's a very rigid system manager. He has the way he wants to play, and if his first team are all available in this Crystal Palace setup, then that team will do really, really well. That will do really, really well. That will win an FA Cup. That will win a Community Shield. That will go on a run that takes them into the top half of the table, take them as high as 4th in December. However, given the squad size, as soon as key personnel are ruled out, the players that are coming in to fill in those roles in that rigid system aren't good enough to do that. They're just not good enough, unfortunately. And that's partly down to him as well, because a lot of them are coming in completely cold because they've not been used at all over a congested first half of the season. Maybe I'm speaking optimistically here, but I actually think the best thing that he could do at the moment is sign a new contract to Crystal Palace, because I think that would kick it on. That would move it on. He could go and he could take this team potentially to a European trophy this season. He could attack a Europa League campaign next year. He could justifiably go to the board and say, look, these are the type of players that I want. Go and do that for me now in this transfer window. Hopefully in a situation that is slightly less fraught than it was last summer when they didn't even know which European competition they were going to be playing in. And we could actually see a new Oliver Glasner team emerge, because we all know there are going to be changes in the summer in terms of personnel. But whether that happens or not is very much open to doubt. I'd still expect him to leave, and given managers of his caliber always believe they can do a better job at a better club because they are that ambitious, they're that driven, he will believe that he can do something outstanding elsewhere if he decides to move on.
Yeah, when you talk about a summer of change, Marc Guehi could also not be there. He might not even be there at the end of January. We're still yet to see. If you think about what's going to be most damaging for this team right now, losing Glasner or losing a player like Guehi, which will be most damaging for Palace in the long term?
Oh, big question. I think I have to sort of sit on the fence here and say that it really depends on who they replace either of them with. I mean, at the moment, Palace, how Palace would cope without Guehi. I mean, Chris Richards just spent a few weeks out or a few games out with a foot injury. Jefferson Lerma came back into defence, and he does an okay job there. He fills in, and he credit to him, he does a good enough job there. But he's not sort of a specialist centre back. And with Palace playing three at the back, you lose Guehi, and suddenly you've got a massive problem there because you haven't got anyone to come in and fill that gap, not just in numbers, but also in talent and ability. As Don was saying, JD Canvo has potential, and he's had a couple of games where he's come in and he's done well. but at the same time, he's also made those mistakes. Against Aston Villa the other day, he came in and he put in a performance which was largely very good, and Palace fans appreciated it. But then he also made some mistakes in that game. In the Conference League against Larnaca, he made a terrible mistake to give away the goal. But this isn't about JD Canva. It's, Palace and Guehi. I mean, it's such a big loss if they do lose him in this window, especially. They really will need to have someone lined up to come in and replace him. And you're not going to get the same kind of caliber of player as him, clearly. And Glasner, obviously, we've seen what an incredible job Glasner's done. And I think that is definitely, again, who comes in to replace him and how they do it. It will take some time for them to get their ideas across.
Okay, gents, let's leave it there for now. Dom, I know you've got to go, but really appreciate your time as always. Well, joining us now, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Macclesfield owner Rob Smethurst. Rob, I mean, have your feet touched the ground? Are you alive? Are you okay?
It's unbelievable scenes. I think we've actually physically broken the internet. I think we've definitely put Macclesfield on the map. It's been an epic, since Saturday, feet haven't touched the ground. The social media, the lads, the buzz around the town. I've just been out into Macclesfield now, and people are still celebrating. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's something I really wanted to touch on actually, because the Macclesfield story, I don't know if many people know, it is quite poignant actually, because there's a bit of a backstory to it. This is a club that was liquidated, a club that you bought after seeing it on Rightmove, and I just wonder just how powerful that is for a town like Macclesfield fundamentally, because people talk about football and it being the spirit of a town. I mean, the team's back and it's beating Premier League opposition.
It is. I mean, look, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the most important thing about football is it brings communities together. It brings people together. I mean, you can't, the power of the sport just does something that no other sport does. And, when you start to see the fan base and the people and the community and that kind of, unbelievable scenes that we've seen on Saturday, it really does bring sort of like a heartbeat back into the local community. And I think that's something that we're super proud of. I think, it goes deeper than just, a game of football and a match. It's bringing people together. It's, when you're sort of looking at the under 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, all the teams that are coming through, they look up to these players and, even at non-league level. And I think that's something that, is really important is isn't just all about the big boys. It is also about, the small community clubs like us.
Yeah, we need to talk about the romance of the FA Cup, because it really is a dream. This is the magic of it, to see a lower league team end up beating those elite sort of Premier League professionals. But also the beauty of it is that you have a team made up of people who've actually got day jobs. Can you just tell us some of the day jobs some of the players do?
Yeah, this is the craziest thing. We're part-time. We train 2 times a week. One's a school teacher. He's in school this morning. He's a PE teacher. We've got all sorts, electricians, plumbers, coaches. You can imagine it's, we've got a real array of different work that those lads go out and do in the day. And then, they train with us just really probably about 4 hours a week.
Does this then give him some sort of like local hero status? Like, are they walking through towns and people are like tapping them going, you're our idols?
Yeah, do you know what they are? And I think what they've achieved is just something that, like you say, they've created history for themselves. I mean, it's the biggest upset pretty much in the FA Cup, ever. And, when you're looking at a team like us in the 6th sort of tier and, beating the Crystal Palace, and especially with what they've all been through as well over the last, couple of weeks, with obviously losing Ethan. And I think the resilience to go out there and play that game, it was a testament to them, but it was 100%. They gave it absolutely everything, and the the result was for him really, and I think that's the most important thing that those lads wanted to go out and do.
Yeah, I thought it was really special actually, and I just want to sort of just break it down as we're talking about Ethan McLeod. Is a player of yours who died in a car crash on the 16th of December. Saturday was just your 4th game since that actually happened. Now, we've seen pictures of his parents coming in post-match to speak to everyone, hugging them and stuff like that. Can you just articulate what that meant for his parents and also what it meant for them to be there to watch this victory?
Yeah, I mean, it was huge for them. I mean, they came on Boxing Day. We did a minute silence on the pitch. I mean, just leading up to those tragic events, obviously I got the call really first thing in the morning, after the match that he played in. And obviously we had to let and break that news to all the players. So me and John Rooney did that, to the best that we could, and that was a heartbreaking moment for all of us, really. We all got together the day after. We all sat around the club, in silence really for hours. It was a really sort of crazy moment, and then we obviously got one of the games cancelled, and then we then sort of went into sort of just talking to each other and opening up about this about as much as we can, and you know the parents came to the game. I saw them on the side and said, look, this is a huge part of what Ethan had done for us, because he'd scored and he'd helped us get through. So we brought them into the room, and the lads were superb. They were hugging. It was amazing. They enjoyed our celebrations. And that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about they've got, if not one of the toughest times, and they'll never ever get over it. You're never going to. And it was just a nice, really special moment to bring them in and give them that sort of love and attention that we wanted to do.
Rob, first of all, congratulations. I thought, obviously, there was so much community spirit on display. After the game, we sort of spoke to Sam Heathcote. He was talking about how he's a primary school PE teacher and how some of the kids were saying good luck, and he was like, "What for?" And they didn't quite understand, some of them, but some of the older ones did. And then Paul Dawson came in and sort of said that he had been shoveling snow and ice to clear the pitch and clear the surrounding areas. I mean, does that kind of just typify the sort of spirit around the place, and the nature of the guys that you've got at the club, and everything that happened? Does that sort of sum it up for you?
Yeah, it does. We're like it's a bizarre thing. We're like a band of brothers. It's weird. A lot of these players have been with me for a long time. We want to make it a family club, a community club. We run foundations. We've got 300-400 kids in a foundation, kids that can't play football or afford to play football, and boots, and we'll supply all those for them. And we are a special club. I know we've got the bars and the restaurants and everything else that we've kind of created to create that community feel. But when the snow came down, it was a quick message on Facebook, and 200 people turned up with snow shovels, and and there were tractors and quad bikes with to remove the snow. And we've created something special. And I think for a town, this goes so much deeper than just football. We've created this, or amazing culture around the place, and friendships are being made every game. And we do everything we can to involve the whole community, and make that the focal point of Macclesfield, which I think we've been doing now for the last few years. Christmas dinners for free. We open up on Christmas Day. Why not? If we can do those things, then bring that sort of special place, that place where people feel safe, loved. Like I said, it goes deeper, and I think that's what we've created within the football club at Mac.
At what point did you actually believe that you were going to win? Was there a point where you just knew that you were going to win?
Yeah, about 3 seconds to the end. Do you know what? It was crazy, because I thought, look, it's Crystal Palace. It was a fun day out. It was was I expecting a 10-0 whitewashing? Yeah, of course, as you would expect. You're talking about the best of the best, the elite. And it was just about fun. And for the first sort of 3 or 4 minutes, Dawson went in with that header. I thought, hang on, this they're not holding back here. They're actually giving this a go. They weren't sitting back. They were relaxed. They had a game plan. They stuck to it. And once we scored, just before half time, when we went through, there was a little, could it be? Could it actually happen? And then obviously we scored again, and then that was the moment. Then we thought, oh my God, just hang on for dear life if we can. And then obviously they scored a great free kick, and then it was like the last 5 minutes. I just thought, oh, here we go, like you would do. Give me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we did it. And the scenes, the epic scenes, the people running on the pitch, obviously the memory of what we went through with Ethan and everything else, we were just in floods of tears, and we were watching grown men cry, on the side of the football pitch in tears, who've supported this club from well before I got it, and that's the moment of the FA Cup. It's got something that no other cup's probably got. It gives us small little clubs that little glimmer, that little chance that we can all one day dream. And and do you know what? We did it, and dreams can come true. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Well, dreams can continue to come through. To come true, I should say. Any thoughts of who you'd like in the next round? I mean, you've tasted it now. You've beaten the Palaces of this world. Who next?
Who knows? Anyone? Bring them on. No, do you know what the thing? There's two things here. One side of it's selfish. One side of it is let's go and play a big Premier League away, and then the other side is let's bring someone home and play home, purely because of what it actually does to the local town. The pub zone. I was getting messages saying, thank you so much. My bar has taken more money than it did on New Year's Eve. You're supporting taxi companies. You're talking about, the fish and chip shop down the road. You're talking about, the hairdressers that have, before. It goes so much further in what we can do to help those businesses. So in two ways, I'm happy either way, but one big Premiership club come in, I'm sure they've got to fear us.
We love it. Look, we love to see it. This cup is truly special. You guys have really made it special for all of us. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we do love the magic of the FA Cup. Thanks to everyone who joined us for the podcast today. And also thank you guys for joining us too. We'll be back soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.